Hey, what's up, BikeRumor fans? So today I'm here with Bastien Donce, who is the product manager for Zipp Wheels. And Bastien, you guys kind of gave us a shout. You wanted to do a quick run through about tubeless straight side, which is more commonly known as hookless wheels, which is honestly like a bunch of stuff that we heard when you guys launched your wheels. It's a bunch of stuff a lot of the other brands are saying. So I'm kind of curious, like, what was the impetus for reaching out on a subject that has kind of already been covered a lot lately?
Hey, hi Tyler, and hi everyone, and thanks for having me. Um, yeah, it's you're completely right. This is absolutely something that we've discussed quite a bit already. Ever since we presented the new 303 wheels, 303 Firecrest, 303S in the spring this year, we've been talking about a hookless and showing the benefits. It's clearly, I mean, clearly we're seeing some questions from people using our wheels, dealers wondering about compatibility with tires, users wondering if the process, the interface is really safe. So for us, it was important to really come out with a strong message that hookless is not only safe, it has a ton of benefits, and that's why we're reaching out and we want to talk about this today.
Cool. I mean, are people having any problems with hookless rims? Because when you guys relaunched and redesigned the 303s, you went to a hookless design, and those are more than just gravel wheels, which, we've seen hookless on mountain bike. Then we started seeing a
Right.
little bit on gravel because both of those you have lower pressures. And now with the new 303s, and there's a couple other brands doing hookless road carbon, disc brake rims. Obviously, people are running much higher pressures on road bikes and road tires. So, like, was anybody having issues?
No, not at all. I mean, everybody with who purchased those wheels from us, and obviously I can't talk for the for other brands in the market, but really have not heard of any issues. And to the contrary, everybody that gets those wheels is actually providing us some pretty sweet and awesome feedback. It's really more the people have not bought this, who don't have experience and don't maybe understand everything that's going on, are wondering, this we've been using hooks on bicycle wheels for so many years. We've been trained or educated to inflate our wheels so high with so high pressures that people are just wondering whether if it's going to be safe for them and what the benefits are. So for us, there's quite a lot, and really it's just an attempt for us to explain all of those benefits to everyone out there.
All right. Okay. So we'll get into the benefits in a second, but there was a couple of slides and some things in the little presentation we just ran through that I wasn't super sure about, and I was kind of wanted you to clarify a little bit because, so basically, there's now, or has been actually, you said since 2019,
Yeah.
an ETRTO standard for hookless or tubeless straight side rims. So now there's, I guess, more of a European standard, and those same kind of tolerances, numbers, dimensions are coming to ISO, which is more of an international standard. But one of the things you mentioned there was that in the early days of people going tubeless, there was actually like a 29er mountain bike rim kind of standard in tolerances and sizes, and then there was the 700C road. Like, what was the difference in those? Because I mean, I mixed and
That's really
matched.
I know and I don't know if people know this very much, but it's really it's one of the inconsistency in the bike industry for so long. There used to be different dimensions for bead seat diameter between a mountain bike 29er and a road 700C wheel. We're looking at that dimension that you might have seen on the side of your rims that say 622, and if I can show you, like on the rim right now. So the bead seat diameter that I'm talking about is really this dimension here. So this is where the tire bead come and rest once the tire is inflated. So that's the bead seat diameter, and this is that 622 millimeter dimension that you're seeing on there. And even though the mountain bike 29ers and road 700C used to both say 622, then the actual fine prints of the dimension used to be slightly different. It was 621.5 for one and 621.95 for the other. And basically, like for the longest time, if you were to mix and match like a mountain bike rim with a road tire, like what we all did, for instance, in the early days of gravel, then typically there could be that could lead to some issues.
So which one was the
So
smaller? The mountain bike was the smaller, the 621 and a half, or vice versa?
I believe the mountain bike was the smaller, yeah.
Okay. And so if you put like a gravel or road tire on, which had that tiny bit bigger, then you
Yeah,
end up with just enough of a wiggle there that potentially you could have
I know.
issues, maybe.
Especially since, I mean, tires, there's tolerance, right? So if you ended up with a tire like on the small side of tolerance, then you would be completely fine. But then if you have a gravel tire that starts being a little bigger on the upper end of the tolerance, then for sure that could lead to problems and issues down there.
So
So it's
well, how long ago are we talking, right? Like if I had rims from 2018, should I be worried, or is it like, are we talking like this was like 5, 10 years ago?
So as far as I remember, it was a little longer than this. It was five some years ago. But it's true that some of the inconsistency, especially when it comes to road tubers, have persisted in the industry up until recently. Because the standard I'm talking about has only been published in ETRTO last year, even though the rims that were made before that, the drawing has been known for some years before that. So for instance, when we designed the 303 rims this year, we already knew that this was going to get voted into the standards, and we already designed our rims to follow that. So yeah, I'm talking like longer term, longer time, like closer to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is when there were that discrepancy.
Okay, so the further we move along, the better things are getting, and now, hopefully soon, there will be kind of universal standards that every manufacturer can follow if they choose to. And I would imagine, like, do you have to follow those standards in order to be able to legally sell your product, or can you just
So
say
that's
whatever?
we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of the norm, right? Because ETRTO is really like the strong committee that regulates the relation within rim and tires, and ETRTO is a European organization. That's European Technical Rim and Tire Organization, and technically, what they suggest, their sets of recommendations, is just that, a suggestion. But ETRTO for several years now has really been working strongly with ISO, and ISO is a much more global set of rules, and it's a lot more mandatory. You can still decide to make components outside of the dimensions ISO recommends, but that means you're really engaging your responsibility. And therefore, if you have an accident, a failure, or a customer, for instance, that has an issue when you're not following the rules, then the consequence for your organization can be pretty dramatic. So it's really in everybody's interest in the industry to just follow the norm, not just from a responsibility standpoint, but just because it's going to make life so much easier for everybody down the road, from the dealers and cyclists out there that just want to have a good set of wheels, a good set of tire, and make sure everything works together.
Right, cool. All right, so let's kind of get back to the technical aspects of it. So obviously there's like visually there's that little safety net when you have a hook, right? Because the bead like is getting
Yeah.
trapped against that hook, right? So you take that away, I think probably some people's concern as well. I'm just going to inflate my tire and it's going to go poop and like right off the rim, right? But you guys tested this and were able to find a burst pressure, which burst pressure is when the tire bursts off of the rim. That was like what in most cases close to 200 psi.
That's true, and it's really something that we've done. Obviously, the fact that we follow the rule is not the only thing we do. We have done a lot of testing with a huge variety of tires on the market. And for instance, if you look at our 303S, we've been testing a variety of 25C tires on that 303S wheel. And we found that a vast majority of the tires, the burst pressure was around the 200 psi level, with the lowest tire being closer to 150, 160 psi. So for us, the rims and the tires are definitely capable of holding really high pressure. And I think this is really coming from the fact that tires, and specifically tubeless tires, now have much stronger and stiffer beads than standard clincher. And really, it's really the connection between that beads and the relation within that bead seat interface, the height of the wing of the rim here, that is really making sure the tire stays safe inside of the rim and without needing any hooks at all.
All right. So at that point, you're really relying on the bead construction of the tire, because if the bead can't expand, then like, I mean, literally the tire is locked on there at any pressure theoretically, which I guess is why you can get away with really low pressures too, right?
Absolutely, and when you think of it, road bicycle wheel is maybe the last wheel on earth that still has hooks, because nothing else, cars, motorcycle, commercial trucks, buses, airplanes, all of those things have wheels that don't have hooks, and it's really working on that connection with the bead seat diameter, the strength of the bead that keeps the tire inside of the rim.
Oh, but those
And
fail all the time. I mean,
not exactly right.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I guess that's a pretty good. I don't know. That gives me a little bit of confidence on it. And then the other interesting thing you mentioned was that you were getting those same burst pressures with tires with hooks, or rims
It's
with hooks.
For us, it's very similar. So obviously, it really depends on the construction of the tire, right? Like if you have a tire and the bead is not super strong and super stiff, then obviously the burst pressure is going to be lower on a hookless rim than a hooked rim. What we're seeing, and I'm really seeing, for instance, on a specific example. So if I look at taking the Zipp tire, our RT28, and we test the burst pressure on the previous generation 303 Firecrest versus the new generation 303 Firecrest, we've actually seen a very similar burst pressure of that tire with or without the hooks. So for us, it's tire retention is not so much a factor of the hooks anymore. It's really a question of mating that tire with that rim, and that's what's going to keep you safe.
Okay, cool. And so you guys were testing much higher, and people are used to running fairly high. I mean, comparatively to gravel and stuff. But like, I mean, I'm 6'2", 185 or something before I get kitted up. So for me, if I run less than 80, and that's even with like a 20, most of my tires now are 28 millimeters, right? Like less than 80, it feels squirmy and stuff to me. But with the new Zips, you guys have a max PSI recommendation of 73 PSI. So like, if you're testing it up to, at a bare minimum 150, why do you put such a low recommended pressure?
That is really the core of the problem. So first, let's say that the 73 psi pressure limit is something that is imposed by ETRTO. So if you want to respect the norm on a hookless rim, you have to have a max pressure of 73 psi, and which is why we have it printed on the side of our rims. And the hookless rim, we do not recommend going over. So the thing that's important to understand, and that's the core of the problem, a lot of people thought that because of the 73 pressure limits, the rims are not safe. And clearly that's not the truth. You could run more, but really we don't advise to. And the reason is for us is not a safety problem, it's a performance problem. We have a new approach on our wheels, and it's everything we've been explaining since the launch of those wheels, that is based on efficiency. And what we think is, in order to make faster wheels, beyond just aerodynamics, we have to look at rolling efficiency and vibration damping. And even though a lot of first road cyclists have been trained, to inflate tires at the max pressure for so many years, now we're realizing that narrow tires at high pressure are actually slower. It's counterproductive to your speed, because when you have such a high pressure, your bike is really going to bounce off of all of those little asperities and bumps and stuff on the roads. Even the smooth roads has a lot of vibrations. Whereas when you have a bigger tire at lower pressure, the rolling efficiency is just as good, but now your tire is really soaking up all of those bumps to keep your forward motion as smooth as possible, so that you can really use all of your energy. So for us, a bigger tire and lower pressure is actually the key to going fast. And the fact that we've made those rims really wide is what helps the tire sit on the rim without any squirm. So the wide profile, the hookless that help the tire sit super square on that rim profile is what's going to allow you to run, much lower pressure. For instance, like I'm 175 pounds and I run about 60 psi on my 28C tire. And I can corner a lot faster than I ever have at any other pressure. Obviously, I've got so much more cornering speed that I can go on those corners a lot more aggressively than I used to before without feeling any of the drawback, any of the sluggishness on the straights. So really for us, tubeless is the way to being faster. Hookless is the way to go to lower pressure without having any of the squirm. And the 73 psi is not a safety problem. It's really a performance thing. To be faster, you have to go lower.
Okay. So Zipp makes tires, and obviously you guys would probably love it if everyone were running Zipp tires on their Zipp rims, but people like whatever tire brand they like how, and it seems like really this, as far as like the safety issue being having a lot to do with tire construction, how do I know like if whatever my favorite tire brand is compatible with hookless rims?
So that's the other key issue, and maybe the question that we get the most on the phone, isn't it? Like people call us and like, man, I really love your wheels, they're awesome, but what tires can I use? And to be honest, I mean, you see compatibility lists out there, you see lists of tires that are approved or not approved, and in my opinion, those compatibility lists are somewhat counterproductive because they're such a hassle. And my hope is now that we have a norm, and as soon as everybody in the industry is going to make products that comply to the norm, then we're just going to have wheels, we're just going to have tires that all work together like they have been in the past on standard clincher products. And I think we're going towards that. It's going to become that soon. But in the meanwhile, for sure, we understand we have to provide customers and users, riders with tires that work with us. So we have a compatibility list of tires on our website. There's a link in our presentation, and people can use that to see what tires are approved. It's important to say that we're not going at this the same way other brands have been doing. The way we look at it is our rims are compatible with ETRTO. If a tire is compatible with ETRTO, then it will work on our rims. So from our point of view, any tire that has tubeless or tubeless beads that's compatible with ETRTO is compatible with our wheels. And it should really be the tire supplier that provides the answer whether if their tire works or not.
Okay.
So out of convenience for the users, like we've been working with all of the tire makers, and providing them wheels, helping them in their testing. And as soon as that tire maker gives us a thumbs up or green lights, then we would add them onto our list. But it doesn't mean that brands that are not on the list are not compatible. It just means that those brands have not given us a green light yet. And really the rider should talk to their tire suppliers to verify compatibility.
Right. So just speaking about Zipp tires, then I'm curious, like you're still making them with what looks like a traditional bead on it, presumably because people might buy those tires to put on a hooked rim. I mean, how long do you think it is before we see tires that are specifically made for hookless rims? I imagine the bead shape could change, right?
I think it's a fascinating opportunity for sure. Like, and this is just the beginning. And I'm sure you've noticed too, in the past 2, 3, 4 years, there has been a flurry of more tubeless tires coming up with more refined beads, refined shapes, and all of those tires are making tubeless life a lot easier than before. So I think for sure there's going to be more and more of those tires coming. What's important is for us, hookless rims needs tubeless tires. You need tubeless or tubeless ready tires because really those are the tires that have the strong and stiff beads, regardless of the shape. And the current tubeless tires on the market work with our interface. We really don't recommend using standard clincher because the beads are just not as strong. And in general, there's more variation in the manufacturing of those, which could lead to safety hazards. But really, tubeless tires is what we recommend, and I'm pretty excited at the opportunity and everything that's going to come in the years in order to really make those tires work even better with the rims.
Cool. And I think it's important to point out that you can still run a tube inside it if you needed to, right? Like if you really slit the tire or something, you just can't run non-tubeless tires on a hookless bead. So as long as you have tubeless tires, you can throw a tube in it if you had to or you wanted to for some crazy reason.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Absolutely. It's we like tubeless because we everything we have, the data we have shows tubeless is faster, but we also understand that it can be a little intimidating if you've never dealt with sealants and you don't know how that works, and people just like tubes no matter what. It is possible to run tubes in those tires 100%. So it's either to repair a flat when you're on the roadside and you want to come home, or if you just like tubes better, that's fine. We only ask that people use tubeless or tubeless ready tires because those have the beads that ensure compatibility and the strong interface.
All right. So how long before we see you guys as sponsored pro teams racing tubeless, hookless rims and tires at something like the Tour de France?
Man, that cannot come soon enough. It's really something that we wish would have happened sooner, and even this year. But man, the racing program has been so disrupted because of the global pandemic that unfortunately did not happen. Um, I mean, even though we make tires, we don't have any ambitions, in that market, and we don't want to impose any of our teams to run our tires because they have other deals going on, and obviously we're just one part of the equation. But a lot of the teams that we share, for instance, with people like Schwalbe has absolutely approved their tires on hookless rims. So on teams like SRAM Canyon, for instance, we can absolutely expect to see those combinations being ridden and hopefully getting some really good victories out there.
Cool. Has anybody done it yet in one of the big events? Any of the Grand Tours?
On Hookless, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you that there's a lot of testing going on right now, and the results are pretty phenomenal. We hear comparisons between you look at those racers teams that have tubulars and tubeless, and you compare the power file between the racers in tubulars and the racers in tubeless, and it's very much in favor of tubeless in terms of efficiency, and that really is consistent with everything we're saying.
So
So for me, it's just
what's the
a matter of
holdup?
time.
Like, why are they not racing on them then?
I think it's maybe the force of habit, having been on the same system and knowing that something works for the longest time. And it's also, I think, at this time, a lot of brands and a lot of racers are testing with different systems, and some racers finding they're lucky with standard clinchers and tube, and some racers just sticking with tubulars because that's what they know, and some racers experimenting on tubeless. I think hookless, tubeless, and big tires make specifically sense for the classics as you go on the cobbles and you have to be fast on the cobbles and on the pavement. But everything we see is that you can be fast just on smooth road as well, and there's significant power savings on smooth roads as well. So for me, like it's just a question of time, and it is going to happen.
Right. Okay, so let's bust the big conspiracy theory that you guys are just changing up these standards so that you can sell more wheels. You're forcing me to buy something new, aren't you?
that's that's one of the things we're seeing the most is like a lot of people are like, okay, it's safe, okay, it's fine, I'm not going to crash and the tire's not going to wall, but what's in it for me? Like surely you're making hookless because it's good for your profits. And when I see this, I mean, when I look at all of the benefits in hookless rims, it's really something that bears repeating because we're convinced that hookless is just a better rim for the rider. It really makes for an easier and more straightforward manufacturing process because now we can use hard tools instead of silicone mandrels, and that really gives us better control. So at the end of the day, the rim is stronger, the rim is lighter. It's also more economical, and people have seen, we've really dropped the price on our 303 wheels this year compared to previous year, thanks to better manufacturing. You also have like aerodynamic gains because the transition between the rim and the tire is a lot smoother. So the system is faster, it's more aero. It's a little greener, it's a little safer. I mean, there's all of those benefits, that add up, that are pretty clear for us. Hookless makes a better wheel.
Cool. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think the one part of that people may not understand is the manufacturing becomes easier, and so like with a hookless, you have straight sides, right? So you can have like one solid mold piece that goes in there, and then it slides right out. But when you have hooks, you have to be able to get a mold into the hook, and you can't do a solid metal unless you have some way of, it's a two piece or multi piece and expands, and like it just adds complexity. Or what some people have done is they just mold a thicker and then they machine it out, and then you end up with like cut fibers and potential weak spots. I mean, people have done it for years and not had too many problems, but I think that's where the manufacturing cost savings and probably a lot of time savings too, right?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. It's just such a better process. I mean, that's exactly what you suggested. So this is, for instance, our 302 rim sections. So you see, it's a standard bed cavity. It doesn't have the tubeless interface, but in order to mold that inside cavity here, what we do is we use a silicone mandrel. So it's a soft tool, so that once the rim is cured, you can squeeze it past that bottleneck created by the hooks up there. Whereas on a hookless profile, like the 303 Firecrest rim right here, this is like the straight side here, allow us to use one steel tool, like one solid tool, to create all of the cavity from the rim. And using that hard tool is such a much straighter forward process to create those rims. You have better control. You don't use as much material. You have better compaction of the carbon fiber, better control over how much resin you push in. It's a better rim overall, and really drives to cost saving that we pass on to the end user.
All right.
So the rim is cheaper, it's lighter, stronger. You win at all level.
So the better compaction, that's I think because you have basically a hard metal mold that you can pressurize against, as opposed to silicone one. I would imagine you can only put so much pressure in there before you just compress the silicone and your tire rim shape goes to crap, right?
Exactly.
So now, like the silicone, that must be pretty hard because what's the PSI when you guys are molding the rims? Like how much PSI are you pressurizing those things to?
Oh, it's obviously it's really high, and the temperature is really high. Now we're getting into the details and the nitty gritty of the fabrication of the rims, and some of the stuff that
trade secrets.
Trade secrets, like people out there would not want me to disclose.
But I almost got you. Right
obviously, this is stuff that there's a lot of limitation, obviously, with those mandrel, and at the end of the day, steel tools is just a better way of making those rims.
Cool. Yeah, I have a feeling like so many other standards that we all enjoy today that we're going to look back on this in 5-10 years and just laugh that there was ever any debate over the safety and whatever utility of hookless rims. But cool, man. Well, I know you've got to jump on our call, and I appreciate your time. But yes, good stuff.
Absolutely.
So thanks, and I guess I should say too, like. We're talking to Zipp about this. This is a universal topic, and obviously I kind of teed up some of the questions so you could explain the process. This is not like a promotion for Zipp. I think the information here is generally useful when you're looking at multiple brands and multiple tires and stuff. We just happen to be talking to you guys. So before you guys comment that this is, we're just promoting Zipp, this is not a paid promotion. It's just conversation between two people about something cool. So yeah, thanks a lot, Bastian.
I really that's exactly right, and those benefits, I mean, other brands are going to find it as well, so hopefully this is the way forward for sure.
Right on. Cool.
Thanks a lot for having me, Tyler.
Yep, thank you. See ya.